Let me be very clear right from the start. This is not about fear, hype, or headlines. This is about discipline. This is about understanding how money actually behaves when the world changes. And right now, the world is changing fast. If you're sitting comfortably holding piles of cash, telling yourself you're being safe, you may be doing the most dangerous thing you can do in 2026. Cash feels good. It feels calm. It feels responsible. You look at your bank balance and think you're protected, but cash is lazy. Cash doesn't work. Cash doesn't grow. And in an environment where inflation, policy shifts, and global instability quietly eat away at purchasing power, cash is not a shield. It's a slow leak. Here's the hard truth most people don't want to hear. Money that does nothing is money that is dying. Inflation doesn't announce itself loudly every morning, but it shows up every year in higher costs, thinner margins, and reduced options. If your money isn't producing, you're falling behind. Even if the number in your account looks the same, smart capital has a job. Its job is to earn, to protect, and to compound. That means ownership. That means assets. That means putting money to work in businesses, instruments, and systems that generate real cash flow. Not speculation, not gambling, real productivity. In 2026, the difference between people who survive financially and people who don't won't be intelligence. It won't be luck. It will be allocation. Where your money sits matters more than how hard you work to earn it. Cash sitting still is exposed to every bad decision made by governments, every spike in prices, and every currency adjustment you can't control. So what do disciplined investors do instead? They demand income. They prioritize assets that pay them for owning them. They focus on dividends, royalties, profitable companies, and durable sectors that can pass costs forward. They diversify intelligently, not emotionally. They don't chase shiny stories. They chase returns that show up quarter after quarter. They also understand risk properly. Risk isn't volatility. Risk is permanent loss of purchasing power. Risk is being too comfortable. Risk is believing that doing nothing is safer than doing something structured and informed. This isn't about being aggressive. It's about being intentional. Every dollar should have a purpose. Every investment should have a thesis. And every portfolio should be built to withstand reality, not fantasy. If you want security, you don't hide in cash. You build systems that produce. You own things that earn. You align your money with discipline instead of emotion, because the market doesn't care how cautious you feel, and inflation doesn't reward patience without productivity. Why portfolios that survive are the ones that never let money sit idle, never let fear dictate strategy, never let comfort replace performance. Cash is not safety in 2026. Holding cash may feel secure, but inflation quietly destroys its value every day it sits idle. Money must work or it dies. Capital that doesn't produce income or growth is losing purchasing power, no matter how large the B. Balance looks. Allocation matters more than effort. Where your money is placed is more important than how hard you work to earn it. Income-producing assets are protection. Dividends, cash-flowing businesses, and productive assets provide real defense against inflation and uncertainty. Doing nothing is the real risk. True risk isn't market movement. It's staying comfortable while your wealth's slow. Leah Rhodes. Cash feels safe because it doesn't move. It sits there quietly, giving you the illusion of control. You can check it any time, count it any time, and convince yourself that because the number hasn't gone down, you're protected. But safety isn't about what you can see today. Safety is about what your money can still buy tomorrow. In 2026, holding large amounts of cash is not conservative. It's outdated thinking. Inflation doesn't need permission to attack your savings. It doesn't knock on the door or make headlines every morning. It works silently, month after month, reducing the real value of every unit of currency you hold. You might still see the same balance on your screen, but the purchasing power behind it is shrinking. That's the trap. People confuse stability of numbers with stability of value, and those two things are not the same. When prices rise faster than interest on cash, you are losing money in real terms. It doesn't feel like a loss because it's invisible, but it's relentless. Food costs more, energy costs more, housing, insurance, education, healthcare, everything that matters becomes more expensive. Cash doesn't fight back, it just absorbs the damage. And the longer you sit still, the more ground you give up. Another dangerous belief is that cash gives you flexibility. In theory, that sounds logical, but flexibility without strategy is just hesitation. By the time opportunities become obvious to everyone, the best returns are already gone. Cash holders often wait for the perfect moment, not realizing that markets reward preparation, not timing. While they wait, disciplined investors are collecting income, reinvesting returns, and compounding quietly. In 2026, economic conditions are not designed to reward people who do nothing. Governments print, central banks adjust, policies shift, currency values fluctuate. None of this works in favor of idle money. Cash becomes a tool of control for systems, not a tool of growth for individuals. If you rely on it for safety, you are trusting forces that don't prioritize your financial future. There's also an emotional comfort that comes with cash. It reduces anxiety because it feels simple. No statements to analyze, no market swings to tolerate, no decisions to defend. But simplicity is not the same as security. Avoiding complexity doesn't eliminate risk, it just hides it. The risk is still there, quietly compounding against you instead of for you. Real safety comes from resilience, not stillness. Resilience means your money is positioned to adapt. It means your capital is exposed to productivity, not decay. It means owning assets that have the ability to adjust prices, generate income, and survive inflationary pressure. Cash has none of those qualities. It cannot raise its own value. It cannot respond to changing conditions. It only waits. History is brutally honest on this point. Every major inflationary period has punished cash holders and rewarded asset owners. The pattern repeats because human behavior repeats. People rush to cash during uncertainty, believing they're protecting themselves, only to discover later that their money bought far less than it did. By then, the opportunity to reposition cheaply is gone. Holding some cash for liquidity is reasonable. Treating cash as a long-term strategy is not. Cash should be a tool, not a destination. It should serve a purpose, not define your entire financial posture. When cash becomes the core of a portfolio, it signals fear, not discipline. In uncertain times, the instinct to retreat is natural. But wealth is not preserved by retreating from reality. It's preserved by understanding it and positioning accordingly. Inflation is a reality. Policy shifts are a reality. Currency erosion is a reality. Ignoring these forces doesn't make them disappear. It just makes their impact more severe. The most dangerous thing about cash in 2026 is that it lies. It tells you you're safe while it's slowly eroding your future options. It tells you you're being patient while time works against you. It tells you you're protected while costs rise and purchasing power slips away. Smart money doesn't panic, but it also doesn't freeze. It recognizes that safety comes from movement with purpose, from owning productive assets, from demanding returns, from refusing to let capital sit idle while the world gets more expensive. Cash may look harmless, but in the wrong environment, it becomes the quietest destroyer of wealth. Money has only one real purpose: to move. When it stops moving, it starts losing relevance. People like to think of money as something you store, something you protect, something you lock away until a better day arrives. But money was never designed to sit still. The moment capital becomes inactive, it begins to decay, even if that decay isn't immediately visible. There is a dangerous comfort in watching a balance remain unchanged. It feels like stability. It feels like control. But in reality, money that produces nothing is slowly being stripped of its power. It buys less, it secures less, it limits future choices. And the longer it remains idle, the weaker it becomes. That is the silent cost most people ignore. Every functioning economic system rewards participation. Productivity is compensated, ownership is rewarded, contribution creates return, Money that is deployed into productive channels earns its place in the system by generating value. Money that refuses to participate is quietly penalized, not through dramatic losses, but through erosion, through opportunity, through shrinking purchasing power. In 2026, doing nothing with money is not a neutral position. It is an active decision to fall behind. Inflation alone ensures that. Even modest inflation compounds over time, turning inactivity into a guaranteed loss. People argue that they're avoiding risk by staying in cash, but what they're really doing is accepting a slow, predictable decline. In real value, the idea that preserving capital means avoiding movement is a misunderstanding of how wealth works. Preservation doesn't come from stillness, it comes from alignment. Money must be aligned with assets, businesses, and systems that generate excess value. Otherwise, it becomes a wasting asset, no different from a machine left unused in a warehouse, rusting while newer, better tools take its place. There's also a psychological trap tied to idle money. It creates the illusion of optionality. People believe that by holding cash, they're keeping all doors open. But optionality without action eventually becomes paralysis. While decisions are delayed, markets move forward, companies grow, assets reprice, opportunities disappear. By the time certainty arrives, the advantage is gone. Productive money doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It demands compensation for risk and time. It earns dividends, interest, royalties, or growth because it is exposed to activity. It may fluctuate, but fluctuation is not the same as loss. Loss happens when money fails to keep up with the economic reality around it. Another uncomfortable truth is that systems are not designed to reward save indefinitely. Modern economies are built on spending, investment, and expansion. Idle capital does not support that structure, so it is diluted, whether through inflation, currency devaluation, or policy decisions. Unused money is gradually pushed to the sidelines. This isn't accidental, it's structural. People often say they'll invest later, once things feel clearer, but clarity is usually recognized only in hindsight. By the time the path looks obvious, the pricing has adjusted. Those who waited feel safe, but they also feel left behind. Meanwhile, those who understood that money must work accepted uncertainty early and were compensated for it over time. Working money creates momentum. Income generates reinvestment. Reinvestment compounds. Compounding builds resilience. This chain never starts with idle cash. It starts with the decision to put capital to work despite discomfort. Not recklessly, not emotionally, but intentionally. The fear of loss keeps many people frozen. They focus on short-term fluctuations instead of long-term decay. A market dip feels painful and immediate, while inflation feels distant and abstract. But the math doesn't care about feelings. Over time, consistent erosion does more damage than temporary volatility ever could. Money that works also teaches discipline. It forces you to evaluate performance, assess risk, and think in terms of ownership rather than comfort. Idle money teaches nothing. It creates complacency, and complacency is expensive. In a world that moves faster every year, capital that stands still becomes irrelevant. It doesn't grow, it doesn't protect, it doesn't adapt. It simply waits to be overtaken by rising costs, changing markets, and better prepared participants. Wealth isn't built by avoiding motion. It's built by understanding where motion belongs. Money that works has a purpose. Money that doesn't is slowly disappearing in plain sight. Most people believe their financial future is determined by how hard work. They measure success in hours, effort, and sacrifice. While effort matters, it is not the deciding factor. Two people can work equally hard, earn the same income, and live completely different financial lives. The difference is not discipline or intelligence. The difference is where their money is placed. Money is directional. It follows rules, incentives, and structures. When it is positioned correctly, it multiplies. When it is positioned poorly, it stagnates or disappears. Effort earns money once. Allocation determines what that money does for the rest of its life. That is why allocation matters more than effort, especially in an environment that is constantly shifting. Income is finite. There are only so many hours in a day, only so much energy a person can expend. no matter. How ambitious you are, your labor has a ceiling. Capital does not. Capital can scale without your presence. It can work while you sleep, while you age, while you focus on other priorities, but only if it is placed where growth and income are structurally supported. People often overvalue effort because it feels personal. You can control how hard you work. You can feel proud of it. Allocation, on the other hand, feels abstract. It requires decisions that don't come with immediate emotional rewards. You don't feel productive reallocating capital, but that decision can be more impactful than years of extra labor. In 2026, economic systems reward positioning over exertion. Policies, markets, and technologies evolve faster than individual effort can keep up. You can work harder and still lose. Ground if your money is sitting in the wrong places. Inflation doesn't care how exhausted you are. Market shifts don't pause out of respect for your dedication. Poor allocation quietly cancels out good effort. You can earn more every year and still feel poorer if rising costs outpace the productivity of your capital. This is why many high-income individuals remain financially fragile. They focus on earning, not positioning. Their money arrives, sits, and erodes, forcing them to work even harder just to maintain the same standard of living. Good allocation creates leverage. It allows effort to echo beyond the moment it's applied. A dollar placed into a productive asset continues to work long after it is earned. It produces income, appreciates or compounds, reducing dependence on constant labor. Over time, this shift changes everything. Decisions become less urgent, risk becomes more manageable, time becomes an asset instead of a constraint. Allocation is also about understanding context. Not all assets perform the same in every environment. Some thrive in inflation, some protect during uncertainty, some generate income regardless of growth. Choosing where to place money requires awareness of broader forces, not just personal goals. Effort is internal. Allocation is external. One without the other is incomplete. There is also a behavioral advantage to proper allocation. When money is positioned intentionally, emotions have less influence. You're not reacting to headlines or short-term noise. You're operating within a structure designed to perform over time. This reduces impulsive decisions that often undo years of hard work in moments of fear or excitement. People who focus only on effort often burn out. They believe the answer to every financial problem is more work, more hours, more sacrifice. Eventually, the limits become clear. Time runs out, energy fades. But capital, if allocated wisely, doesn't share those limitations. It continues, regardless of personal capacity. The uncomfortable truth is that many people work harder than they need to use their money is working against them instead of for them. Poor allocation creates drag. Good allocation creates lift. One makes progress feel heavy, the other makes it inevitable. In the long run, wealth is less about how much you make and more about how well you place what you make. Allocation turns income into systems. Effort alone turns income into consumption. And once the effort stops, so does the progress. Protection in uncertain times doesn't come from hiding. It comes from ownership. When markets shift and costs rise, the people who are protected are not the ones holding still, but the ones holding assets that produce. Income is the difference between vulnerability and resilience. And in a world shaped by inflation and volatility, income-producing assets are what keep Portfoli standing. There is a fundamental distinction between assets that promise value and assets that generate value. Promises depend on sentiment, timing, and optimism. Generation depends on cash flow. When an asset pays you for owning it, it becomes a source of stability rather than speculation. That payment creates a buffer against uncertainty, regardless of what markets are doing in the short term. Income-producing assets change the psychology of investing. When money arrives regularly, fear loses its grip. Volatility becomes noise rather than a threat. Instead of watching prices anxiously, attention shifts to performance. Cash flow turns patience into a measurable reward. This is why income is often underestimated by those chasing rapid growth. yet relied upon by those focused on longevity. Inflation exposes the weakness of non-producing assets. As costs rise, assets that cannot adjust struggle to keep pace. Income-producing assets, especially those tied to real businesses, often have the ability to raise prices, increase payouts, or expand margins. This adaptability is what makes them protective. They respond to pressure instead of absorbing it, dividends, interest, royalties. And rents are not just returns, they are signals. They indicate that an asset is connected to real economic activity. Someone is paying for a product, a service, or access. That exchange anchors value in reality. Even if prices fluctuate, the underlying activity continues, providing continuity when markets feel unstable. Another overlooked benefit of income-producing assets is reinvestment. Income doesn't have to be spent to be valuable. When reinvested, it accelerates compounding. Small, consistent payments grow into meaningful influence over time. This creates a self-reinforcing system where assets fund expansion rather than relying on external contributions. Protection is also about optionality. Assets that generate income give you choices. You can reinvest, diversify, or use the income to offset expenses. This flexibility reduces the need to sell during unfavorable conditions. Forced selling is one of the most common ways investors lock in losses. Income helps avoid that trap by reducing dependence on timing. Many people misunderstand protection as avoiding drawdowns. But drawdowns are temporary. What matters is survivability. Can your portfolio continue functioning through stress? Income-producing assets are designed for endurance. They are built to operate, not to impress. Over time, this reliability becomes more valuable than dramatic short-term gains. There is also a structural advantage to income in policy-driven environments. When interest rates, taxes, or regulations change, assets with predictable cash flow can be adjusted, optimized, or reallocated strategically. Idle assets offer no such control. They simply react. Income provides leverage, and leverage provides adaptability. Ownership of productive assets also aligns you with growth instead of consumption. Instead of being on the paying side of inflation, you participate on the receiving side. Rising costs paid by consumers become revenue for businesses you own. That shift in position transforms inflation from a threat into a factor to be managed. Income-producing assets demand discipline. They require evaluation, patience, and long-term thinking. But that discipline is rewarded with stability. Not the false comfort of stillness, but the real comfort of systems that continue to function regardless of market mood. In an uncertain world, protection is not about predicting the future. It's about owning structures that generate value no matter what the future brings. Doing nothing feels responsible because it avoids immediate discomfort. There's no decision to defend, no volatility to endure, no possibility of being wrong today. But comfort is not a measure of safety. In fact, comfort is often the signal that risk has gone unnoticed. The most dangerous financial positions are the ones that feel calm while slowly working against you. People tend to define risk as visible loss. A falling market, a red number, a sudden drop in value. Those events trigger emotion, so they command attention. But real risk is rarely loud. Real risk operates quietly, over time, without drama. It shows up years later in reduced options, delayed retirement, financial stress, and the realization time was wasted standing still. Inaction is not neutral. It is a decision with consequences, even if those consequences are delayed. Choosing not to allocate capital is choosing exposure to inflation, policy shifts, and opportunity cost. While nothing appears to be happening, something very real is happening beneath the surface. Purchasing power is declining. Markets are repricing. Wealth is being redistributed to those who are positioned, not those who are waiting. Comfort encourages the illusion of control. When nothing changes, it feels like nothing can go wrong. But stability of appearance is not stability of outcome. Systems evolve whether you participate or not. Prices rise. assets appreciate, businesses grow. If you are not part of that movement, you are effectively moving backward relative to everyone who is. The idea that waiting reduces risk, assume that clarity will arrive before action is required. In reality, clarity usually arrives after opportunity has passed. The best opportunities never feel safe in the moment. They feel uncertain, uncomfortable, and inconvenient. That discomfort is the price of entry. Those who avoid it pay a different price later, often much higher. There is also a compounding cost to inaction. Missed returns dawn. Just disappear. They eliminate the returns that could have been generated from reinvesting those gains. Time is the multiplier most people underestimate. A few years of hesitation early on can outweigh decades of effort later. Doing nothing doesn't pause the clock. It lets it run without you. Many people confuse caution with wisdom. Caution can be valuable when paired with strategy. Without STR, it becomes avoidance. Avoidance feels safe because it postpones responsibility. But postponed responsibility has a way of returning with interest. The longer decisions are delayed, the fewer options remain, and the more pressure builds. Markets don't reward those who wait for permission. They reward those who understand probabilities and act within them. Risk is not eliminated by staying, it is transformed. Instead of market risk, you accept certainty risk. The certainty that inflation will reduce value, that time will pass, that opportunities will not wait. Another danger of comfort is complacency. When nothing forces a decision, skills dull, awareness fades, discipline weakens. People stop evaluating, stop learning, stop adapting. Then when change finally becomes unavoidable, they are unprepared. Action taken under pressure is rarely optimal. Risk is also relative. While you are standing still, others are moving forward. That gap widens quietly. What once felt like a conservative position becomes an aggressive disadvantage. Catching up later requires taking far greater risks than would have been necessary earlier. The refusal to accept small uncertainty now often leads to unavoidable uncertainty later. True risk management is not about avoiding movement. It's about choosing informed movement over passive decay. It's about recognizing that systems punish inactivity over long periods. The market does not need you to participate, but your future depends on whether you do. Comfort whispers that tomorrow will look like today. Reality has never worked that way. Change is constant. Costs rise. Conditions shift. Doing nothing assumes stability in a world defined by motion. That assumption is the risk most people never see until it's too late. The greatest financial losses are rarely caused by bold mistakes. They are caused by years of hesitation justified by the desert. To feel safe while the world quietly moves on without you. The truth is, wealth doesn't disappear overnight. It fades when discipline is replaced by comfort, when money is allowed to sit still while the world keeps moving. The future belongs to those who understand that protection comes from productivity, that effort must be matched with intelligent placement, and that income is the shield against uncertainty. When capital is treated with purpose, it adapts, compounds, and survives environments that destroy unprepared portfolios. The real warning is not about markets, governments, or headlines. It's about the quiet damage caused by inaction and misplaced confidence. Those who choose intention over hesitation don't wait to be rescued by better conditions. They build positions that endure regardless of what conditions arrive.